Pete Ferrara, 73, outside center.
John Kinney, 1973, hooker.
Dan Sciarra, 1973, started wing, wound up as a wing forward.
Tom Faranda, same year, second row, except only for a little while, then scrum half. That was supposed to be
Short,
funny.
you're too short for a second.
And the team got big.
How'd you get introduced to rugby? You know, what motivated you to join the club, start it, you know, I mean,
Well, if you don't mind,
Go ahead.
I have the most vivid memory, and it was the first day I was on campus and the very first moments that I was on campus. I was moving into my dorm room, and all these guys had Fairfield rugby shirts, and they were helping move his stuff into the dorm. I had no idea what rugby was. I thought they were going to put a rug in my dorm or something. And finally I asked, I said, what's Fairfield rugby? He said, well, come out and check us out. It was Chuck Dombeck, I remember. He said, come out and check us out. You'll play a great sport, you'll have a lot of fun, and you'll make some great friends. And he was absolutely correct on all three fronts.
so that was that the typical recruiting experience that you folks had?
I went to the, I'd heard that Fairfield had a good rugby team because the guy who recruited us to go to Fairfield U was a former student, and he said, well, there's not much of a football team, but they have a good rugby team. So at the first, there was a meeting, which I went to, and you had people like Tom Kren, who was the president then, Q Murphy, Dr. Kurt Schlichting, a few other characters. Bill Connolly was there, even though he just had graduated. And they gave a huge sales pitch to the freshmen, which is really why probably there's so many class of 73 members. I still have memories of the first meeting, and it sold me. So I think were you at the meeting? You recall that? Does that ring a bell? Peter?
I remember an orientation day. They had, in the campus center, they had different booths. And a lot of people were interested in rugby, and a lot of us joined up. But like you, I had heard about Fairfield Rugby before even coming here.
Yeah.
But they remember orientation
That
day.
was completely run by students, which is somewhat unique. What was your experience with that? I mean,
Well, I thought we had, the whole time I was there, we had great leadership from the very beginning, from the first, as freshmen, Tom Kren was the president, Q Murphy and Fatty Marr were the captains. Sophomore year, we had good leadership. Our class had Bear Murphy as the president when we were juniors and seniors, and great captains. Tim McKendy was just a great, we had really excellent leadership both on and off the field. That was one of the real key, I think, key things to our
We had a
success.
great moderator too,
Who's that?
who really gave us a good spirit, Paul Davis. He was a moderator for many years.
And we were very fortunate in the relationship between the university. I would think Bill Conley would probably be in where the New York rugby clubs, where they would come up here and scrimmage and that, and really help us out. I mean, we got a lot of assistance and training from these are people expatriate from Wales or
Manhattan
England.
Rugby Club, that's right.
And Manhattan, they'd come up to the university here, and then you'd have kind of like a spring training, or but very instructive. And as a result, we did learn to play the game, not that brutal American, where you'd play against teams that were just smackers,
What teams did you generally play? You play college schedule, club, hybrid, too?
Mixed.
I mean, our first couple of years, we played a lot of New York rugby clubs, being in the playing on the B team. Played a lot of them, but I mean, then we had good rivalries with Holy Cross, with
Fordham.
Villanova, with Fordham,
Georgetown,
and
Columbia Business School.
Yeah,
Columbia
right.
Business
Which was an
School.
international
You
team.
scored a famous try against Columbia Business School, and we won the
was
game
our
at the end of
first
the match.
win junior year.
Junior year, first
Yes,
game.
that was a great game.
When we were freshmen, the A-team beat Dartmouth. We had a good trip up to Dartmouth. It was a good 4 years. We had strong
Holy
season.
Cross,
But-
we went up a lot.
Unlike today, where a lot of students come here, they've played rugby in high school. Nobody played rugby in high school. There was only one guy ever,
Charlie Moraes.
Charlie the Scrum Moraes, who came from
Xavier.
St. Francis Prep,
St. Francis.
and he knew how to play.
Yeah, he
The
could
rest
play.
of us learned from as you said before, from the other players, the other students.
I also thought the seven-a-sides was great. That it came in was always a Thanksgiving Day weekend. Our season was over. We'd go down to Randall's Island all day long. It was just something to do Thanksgiving weekend. We got together Saturday all along, and you were quite successful on seven-a-sides, Pete, from what I remember.
So we always had a good team.
Yeah.
And then we go into the city and party.
Yeah.
And that was Thanksgiving weekend, and it was great.
And, I mean, again, we had that initial rivalry with Essex, which was primarily guys that had graduated from Fairfield. And we knew each other and I mean, we had played against them when we were in our sophomore year, where some of us were on the B team. I mean, it would spirited practices. And I think that's part of not having a coach, is that there was the calisthenics before playing. I mean, basically, rugby practices entail playing. And I think that whole process of the 3 days of practice, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and then a selection committee, and I think that was by and large very fair. And it kept. There were always cliques. There's always cliques in any organization with more than 4 people, But I think that it cut back on that, and it wasn't that there were people that got to play on a better team just because of who they were friends with. I really believe it was a very, very, it was competition, and you did see people move up and down.
Selection committee was Thursday night, and it consisted of the captains and the officers and a few representatives from each year. And you'd pick, we would pick 4 or 5 teams on Thursday night, right?
Yeah, because
When I started, we had at least the D team. I know that.
Right.
We went to school during an era where there was a lot of turmoil on campuses around the country and such. I mean, what impact did that have on your experience at Fairfield and what experience in particular?
Well, I mean, again, I think I was seriously, like when the black students took the building over, and I kind of was, approaching it as though this is, very important social issue, and I forget who he was, but one of the guys just said, "Hey, wait a minute, this is great. We don't have to go to school." So I mean, it was from a more we can party. So I mean, I think it was too,
But I do.
It was a social aspect to that protest, as well as a really,
Rugby was viewed, I think, as pretty much of a countercultural sport, wasn't it?
I agree.
It's, we're not football players, we're not basketball
well,
It was
guys.
very popular at Fairfield,
Yeah,
but
very.
if you played rugby, you were out of the mainstream.
But yet, it gave us stability through those years. Because I know there were a lot of people who left school and they didn't feel like they were getting the education they should be getting because of all the turmoil. And I remember thinking that rugby is one of the reasons I wanted to keep coming here and staying with it, because I had friendships and we had goals and.
How was the relationship with the school administration?
tenuous at best.
Well,
I mean, again, at that time, the university had allowed Broward Field to kind of go to seed. And as a result, we used to play down where the Dolan School of Business is now, where there wasn't a flat piece of ground there. There was a manhole cover in the middle of the field. One of the end zones, had to go up a very steep hill. I mean, it was ridiculous.
It was a good home team advantage, though.
Yeah.
Teams did not like to come up and say, what?
It
we're
was a
playing ball
source
here?"
of consternation because we did have this wonderful field that had such historical significance. It was the antithesis of the old field in terms it was flat, but it was deemed too dangerous to play on. It was like concrete, and we couldn't get the administration really to try to fix the field, reseed it, do whatever they had to do. So when we go now and see all these games on Broward Field, it's a bit wistful.
Well, post-rugby careers, post-graduation, you continue with the game? And you play
Oh,
close
very
to
much so. I played I think I played at least 2 years for Essex, and I thought that was really, Saturday mornings we traveled down from Brooklyn with Bob Mazziotti.
Right.
Mazziotti and his wife would go
Tom.
down. Tom Mazziotti. And it kept us together. You went off to dental school.
Well, I played for 3 years.
3 years.
3 years. The last year I played, Essex was the best team in the New York City League. And they played against Gosforth. And
Which were the
almost
the
won.
The England
All the other
champions.
teams had gotten killed by those county champs, and our team played well. But Essex was great because it grew out of Fairfield U and it grew out of Seton Hall, and we had friendships. And as you said, we would take off on Saturday morning and play, and it was great.
And we might
Continue
come
playing
home
rugby
Saturday
for a
night.
number of years after college. Some people played for many years after college.
Do you stay close to the game today?
Well, I played for
I know
4
you
years.
got a shirt there,
Yeah,
but,
well, right, yeah, this is, well, this
You
is,
keep on
here's
top
the
of the
Fairfield,
international scene,
here's the
Tommy,
Fairfield
right?
shirt from 1973. All right, so this shirt is, well, it's 40 years old. It gets taken out for important events like this, okay?
You want
Otherwise,
to convince you to
That's, you know, it almost fits too.
If you subscribe to the Tom Faranda blog, you get snippets of all the great rugby games being played in the world.
Yep.
So that's a good way to stay in touch.
Go other ones.
I played rugby with Essex for 4 years. Then I moved to the Caribbean, and I lived in Jamaica for a couple of years, the Cayman Islands for a couple of years, played down there, came back, and by that point, Essex had merged and become Amex. So I played with them for a few years, and eventually ended up doing a fair bit of coaching for about 10 years in New York. In fact, Mike Token, the current Eagles coach, I coached him when he was playing for the Met Union. So I can rub that in when I see him.
Social side of rugby, which
Oh, there wasn't any.
Oh,
social.
boy.
So you play the game, you go home.
has a tendency to track folks. I mean,
Well, it
You were
was a
pioneers in that.
different
How,
era in terms of the alcohol policy and allowing.
what was the other?
There wasn't.
There
any.
wasn't any. We would have kegs of beer on the field.
Things changed on all college campuses in around 1970. You know, the first year we were here. Prior to that, the students were in jackets and ties. They had to go to church and check something off, and then everything happened with the war, and all of a sudden there were no rules, pretty much. At least we didn't think there were any rules. That's probably the way we
Right, because
behaved. But we had a lot. We always had a lot of fun, and we learned how to play Prince of Wales. Great drinking game.
Well, rugby trips, for example, any trip to Washington, D.C. was always a great event.
Well, when we had
Any
Bob
road
Murphy,
trip.
when we went down the bus that time, and his parents put that big show on, big dinner
Right.
for us. That was just great.
Bob was from Arlington.
Yes.
I remember, I can tell this anecdote. I was, one year I was the treasurer of the club, and I had to make out a budget for the club. And of course, the first item, and the one that occupied the most money was parties. So I was called into the, some committee, I guess the student council or whoever gave out the money, and they said, we have a real problem funding a club. That the biggest budgetary item is parties. That's great. But I had this long explanation that I had prepared about how parties were so integral to rugby, that in its origin, I think somebody helped me with it. And I read the whole thing and stood up, and actually they approved the budget then. So that was pretty good.
Good job.
So that's,
But we sang, and usually we got the other team to our parties and we sang with them. And I've heard recently that they don't sing at rugby parties anymore. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've heard that.
What were the traditions like back then? Singing obviously one of them. What were others?
Right. Well, at the end of the season, the seniors would be awarded the Golden Jock.
Yeah, we'd go down to Travers Island.
Right.
Not Travers Island.
Sherwood
Sherwood
Island.
Island.
Sherwood Island.
Right here in Westport.
And
Was that a banquet or?
Not exactly.
no,
Not exactly.
banquet. No,
the dress code was.
We had a banquet too, but that
it-
was a picnic.
That was picnic.
And the Golden Jock Award.
And the Golden Jock Awards, you went. There was a gauntlet that the seniors would have to go through. That was as close to any kind of hazing thing but I mean, it didn't get too out of hand. But it was,
Things are out of hand all year, so
Yeah.
we didn't
But-
have to get out of hand at any one
But it
time.
was but if you had a grudge against one of the upperclassmen, then it was their last.
That was your
pass.
chance, yeah. That was your shot.
And of course, we had the beach, and we had a lot of parties down the beach, and we didn't suffer from all of the contentiousness that exists now.
No,
Down
because
the
it
beach,
wasn't,
it
it
was
was
no-
mostly
Mostly
seasonal.
students.
It wasn't upscale. The beach is very upscale now, $1 million homes, but it was mostly students, so no one really
Yeah, when did-
cared.
When would you have a student move down to the beach? What year?
Usually senior,
Senior.
sometimes junior.
But
But
the
usually
three of us actually lived together.
Yes, we
U-
lived, we
usually
lived
there
in
were
the
like
Leo Marion.
at least 3 or 4 or 5 houses, which were pretty much
Rugby houses.
Rugby houses. So those are houses that usually had the parties.
And they, a lot of them were the nicer houses on the beach, and they were legacy through the club.
And we would invite, we would, the parties were open, especially to the girls on campus, but they were open to our friends too. But there were always some people who were considered deadbeats, and Bill Byer would sit by the keg and say, "No beer for you, because you're not bringing anything to the table here. You know, you're a deadbeat." And he was right. You know, I'd come along and say, "Bill, give the guy a beer," but he'd go, "No, this person is a deadbeat." But in general, most people were welcome to the parties.
Did you have
Yeah.
dues policy back then? I mean, were
Yeah, I think we did.
students?
Yeah.
$35, something like that. Wasn't much.
Right, no, and, well, I think all students had to pay in,
I don't know.
and then that's where we'd get,
You're
you'd get the money
treasurer.
for the
What was-
budget.
What was the,
That's, there was.
Well, we were a club, so
We
we
were
were
considered
allowed
a
to
club.
get money from the university, as I explained. But look, we didn't have a high overhead. We didn't have much.
Right, I mean-
Uniforms we bought.
And I know that we,
but,
Once in a while, we had a bus.
yeah, once in a
right.
while, the transportation, was a
big
big
for-
cost,
a lot of times
obviously.
we
But a lot of
big
times we
trips.
would go in cars.
Or we
Yeah.
used the red rocket.
Yes, we took the Red Rocket, the bus.
maybe we shouldn't go down that path, though.
No,
The Red Rocket, any path with a bus.
and then, in terms of great victories, when we beat Old Blue
Well, we had,
and
you
the
know, we had-
Cowabunga Club.
We had,
No,
we had, you know, as John mentioned earlier, we're lucky in that when we were freshmen and sophomores, there were a lot of experienced players who'd come up from Manhattan. We had a couple of sessions with the Manhattan Rugby Club, and we learned a lot. So we had a very skillful pack. They weren't the biggest pack, but very skillful. We had a hooker who could throw the ball in straight. We had a good front row. We had good leadership from this guy, Tim McKendy, who's a terrific fella. Great back row, and some pretty explosive backs, pretty good halfbacks between with a lot of depth. You know, Bobby and I, and Tommy D'Amato at fly half.
And Marty
we
O'Connor?
we had a strong junior and senior year. I think senior year we beat now. When did the last college team beat West Point? We beat West Point. We beat Old Blue, and they're now in the semi-professional Super League. We beat Old Maroon, which was a top New York's team.
We had a good core
we beat
of
Yale, too.
juniors.
Right.
And when we were juniors, we had a small but excellent group of seniors. Chris Galvin, Mike Gallagher. We had a guy named Mike Foley who came from soccer, who
Right.
was like fabulous.
Yeah.
And Chris Galvin was the fly half.
Kevin Shaw.
And
Yeah.
Kevin Regan, very fast. So we had a really good team. It took us a few games to start winning, but we did very well our junior
Junior
year.
and senior year we did.
I mean, the
We only
scrum-
remember how good we
I mean,
were.
we were Lilliputans. I mean, there wasn't anybody, I don't think, on the team that played A's that was over 200 pounds. Maybe Nick Peters.
Maybe.
Bill wasn't
Small
on.
team.
We had Bill
but we
Byer.
had,
He
was
wasn't.
was
Yeah.
toughest guy going at 180. What did he weigh? 185, 190 at second row.
But
But
we
he
would-
was, you know, he didn't want to run into Bill.
We would have,
was
you'd
that
see
one.
other teams look at us like, this is a joke. You gotta be kidding me. I mean, and, because Charlie Morace was the tight head prop, now he's shorter than I am. He was still probably 5'4", and pretty chunky, but then when you go into a set, the guy is about this far, his nose is about that far off the ground, and he can't move him, because he was just so stocky and strong. And plus he knew how to play.
You know, UConn became a very good rugby team, club and team. And I know a lot of friends I know from UConn always said they beat Fairfield. But I said, no, when you came to play us, you were a lot bigger than us, but you were new, and we would kill you, you know, because you were new and you didn't really know rugby, but we knew it pretty well. As I
Yeah.
recall, and we beat them pretty good.
I think we
Big
lost.
guys.
We only lost a handful of games as seniors, you know.
Right.
And we.
Rutgers, well, our arch enemies,
That's
Essex,
good, yeah.
put the wood to us.
I gotta move on a little bit there, but
We're talking about how good we
can't
were.
get talk about how good we were. Come on.
You mentioned Pitt earlier, you know,
Yes.
and as an Irish Catholic guy, I can appreciate a Notre Dame graduate at any time, but what attracted Pitt to the rugby club and ultimately
Probably
becoming
the
one?
beer, you know.
I think it was just the general immaturity of everyone that probably, and he,
I
because he
mean,
shielded us from
Was
a
he
lot
a
of
good mentor
troubles.
in that regard, or?
No,
Yeah, no, I
he
mean,
could intervene
he
for us.
took the heat.
Yeah, he
took
understood
the
us.
heat in a lot of cases where, you know, we were spared the heat. And, you know, I think the camaraderie, the fact that all of us did have such a great affinity to him, I think that was where what he got out of the deal was the fact that it is our relationship with him.
Yeah, he enjoyed
Oh, yeah,
us,
yeah.
and we enjoyed his. But Pitt, you could always count on Pitt to be at the party, and
Right.
that's where we got to know him.
But I think we also felt if somebody was in trouble and needed a mediator with the university, Pitt would fight the good fight.
Yeah.
Looking back at all the years you've been associated with, you know, the club, university as well, I mean, what are your fondest memories and, you know, what made it special for you?
I think the fact that we developed good friendships, which have lasted a long time,
Would you say that's
in the long run, that's what's made it special. I think a
That
lot
was-
of people come back and do a lot of things for the university too, who were part of rugby and other extracurricular things on campus. But I think the friendships, like, we have great memories.
And that is a rugby thing, not just Fairfield rugby, that is universal with rugby, I think, that once you make a rugby friend, they're friends forever. I just had a couple of pictures sent to me by an Irish guy living in Switzerland who I played with in Jamaica from 30 years ago. So I think the fact that we melded into that tradition and have done a good job through the whole 50 years of upholding that tradition of tight relationships, tight friendships is a big point in favor of rugby, period.
Well, I think it was Colin Kiley who said, you know, if you're sticking your head between the asses of two guys, you know, for a couple of years, you probably get pretty close to it. So I think that was...
That sounds like Colin.
That sounds like Colin, huh?
It does.
But I think there's a metaphor there that says the game, the kind of game that it was, the kind of contact sport that it was, the scrum, I think lent itself to that kind of closeness that we all felt.
That's excellent. Any, just last question, I guess, any person or incident or event during your career here stick out in your mind as being like the one thing that I treasure to this day?
Oh, I couldn't pick one out.
There are too many to pick from.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, certain events at parties, games, you know, we talked about the game down in the Bahamas. We had the first game that we won when we played Essex. That was, you know, these were the guys that taught us. And that was very emotional to win that game.
You know, I threw a lot of hospital passes, and nobody ever really held it. Chris Galvin, he was on the end of a lot of serious first aid situations due to me, and he never really held it against me.
We don't remember a lot of things.
What were trips like? You know, I mean, we did some when I was here, and you know, what was your experiences with, you know, travel in general, either domestically or internationally?
In our sophomore year, we went to the Bahamas, and it was, you know, not your typical, or wasn't a rugby trip in the sense that you played a bunch of games, like when following year we went to Wales. But we did play one game, and it was the greatest game ever played. We had started the game off without any wing forwards, because when we got to the facility, the rugby club, the Bahamian Rugby Club, we watched a team from Wales just destroy England.
Their A team.
Their A team, it was like
50 to nothing.
50 to nothing. And it was, I mean, they were rhythmic, and the second team who we were going to play, at least were dressed in the same uniforms in that, which we did not have.
They had chants and they were warming up.
and, you know.
We're trying to borrow shoes.
So we had a lot of people that had, there was an outbreak of sunburn phobia that, oh, I'm not gonna be able to play. 'cause
People
I-
bailed on us.
They bailed.
But we didn't bring any equipment because originally we thought this was gonna be a big rugby trip because the previous year they went to Wales, but they said, no, we're not gonna play. So a bunch of us were really disappointed. But then Bob Murphy said, look, you guys are a lot of sophomores. You guys really wanna play, we'll arrange a game. So they arranged this game. We showed up, it was a stadium. Yeah. A lot of people. And now people are bailing on us, right? So we're trying to get a team together.
So you
Right,
basically
Dan?
got a pickup
Yeah.
down and.
Right, well, and also,
So-
we didn't have cleats.
We had bowling shoes,
George Hemmer.
sneakers.
Had a pair of bowling shoes on, I mean,
I think we asked some guys from the A team who had finished playing if we could borrow shoes, and they said absolutely not.
right. So, but it was a very motley crew.
We started with 11.
No,
players.
15, 13, because we just didn't have the two wing forwards.
Yeah, I think, well, I remember we started with 11, and Cedric came on the taxi cab. And
Oh,
he
that's
came
right.
out, and we had 12. And then at halftime,
We got the
the
two-
two wing forwards came out, these two guys
They
who were
were
Bahamians. And they said,
semi-drunk.
you guys are playing very spirited, we're gonna help you out. We were losing 6-0 at half, right?
Right, correct.
Yeah.
And the,
I remember.
the Kurt Schlichting was the scrum half, and because there were other people down there, Joe Postich, who wasn't, these guys had already graduated from the university, but they knew we were gonna be there, and they happened to be, it was like a spring break kind of a thing.
You guys
And-
pay your own way to go there, I mean, there's no
Yeah,
sponsorship?
yes.
Yeah, we
The
had a
Bahamas
raffle.
trip,
No, the raffle was for the rails trip. In the end, someone from the outside did win the car.
But getting back to the greatest game ever played, and a lot of everyone who ever played in this game said it was the greatest game ever played. We ended up winning the game.
It was a
We ended up,
remarkable
we
win.
started to play like, American brand rugby where there was some hard hitting, and these guys seemed to get intimidated by it, right?
Yes.
Am I right? And
I
then
think so.
we ended up scoring like 9 points, and we won 9-6. And I mean, there's a lot of side bars to this game.
But it was,
We stole all their uniforms, but then we gave them back.
How was
Right?
the social situation after? I mean,
oh, good, no,
was that?
the party, well, the team from England or Wales, I'm not sure where it was, they just wanted us sworn to secrecy, that we would never, ever mention the name of their club, that we had won this game. Because, I mean, it was just, we didn't have uniform shirts. They just knew that we weren't the ones in the real rugby shirts. We were in T-shirts, swim shorts.
Everything went well for us. There were like a lot of goal line tackles, and these guys were really good, but just things kind of worked out for us, and we ended up winning the game, right?
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
score?
No, he had that brilliant run down the sideline.
I did,
He followed a kick. And it was
Kicked
just.
it over the guy's head, bounced up to me, ran down the sideline. I think I got tackled right near the goal line.
But it
And I
was,
think we scored after that.
yes.
Did that get you the invitation to Wales the following year, or was that just?
Oh, no.
Wales was a
2
lot
years
different.
later was our senior year.
Because
Wales, we played, it was a lot.
we had this relationship, which originally in our freshman year, isn't that when they went over?
Yeah, they went over.
They had to, what's the name of the guy?
Londorf.
Londorf Rugby Club. And they had been guests of theirs. And then in our junior year, right, they came here,
They came here.
the guys from Wales. So that there was a real affinity then where that was when you still had to be 21 to drink. And of course, everybody on the team wanted to go into the Nautilus at the time, and the guy at the door was going, a lot of you guys are really, 47-year-old guy from Londorf, Wales, this isn't really cultural.
Well, we had a dinner up at the university, and Jim McKay
That's
was
right.
the
Yeah,
MC.
from
Jim
Wild-
McKay, who was like
The wild world of sports.
He's like the Jim Nance of those days, and he was a beautiful dinner,
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
very classy.
How did you host these good folks? Did you put them up in your dorm rooms? What was that?
I think
When they
some-
came here?
Yeah, when they came here, some of them were at the beach.
Probably they stayed down the beach.
Yeah, 'cause we were-
juniors. A lot of us didn't live down the beach.
Right.
But when we went there the following year, they put us against some really good competition.
Yeah.
Because when our team went there, as we were freshmen, our team we were a really big team, and they did really well. So they knew this Fairfield was coming, and they put us against some really good teams, and they killed us.
Yeah. But that trip was, that really was.
That was a rugby trip.
That was a rugby trip, the culture, Wales, we stayed in people's houses who put us up, we met their families,
I
we
mean,
had
we-
great parties.
We flew into
great-
London, we went to Ruislip first, and that was the team that had the big tubs after the game in their clubhouse. You all got in the tub, warm, but that was a great trip.
Good memory.
And then we went to several other cities.
What was the city we went to? We saw the Bath, the Roman baths.
Baths,
We
right,
saw
that was
the-
Bath.
What was that city?
Bristol.
Bristol. We went to
We
Bristol.
went, the mayor.
And we
and
went
his-
over the bridge
they-
into Cardiff.
That's
Yes.
You ever did you get up to Cardiff?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
No,
sure.
we stayed
Saw the
there.
castle there.
Didn't we go to some big
That's-
game in Cardiff Stadium or
We
something?
did.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
counties championship.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know how we remember this stuff, but
You remember more
But
than I do.
that was a really great trip.
it is Tom Ferranda.
And there's Tom Ferranda.
All right, cut.